Narration and story is the true focal point of this game, with the simple mechanics helping those aspects shine. The Beginner's Guide is a game made by Davey Redden, published in 2015. Players follow him as a narrator as he guides us through these different abandoned games that his friend Coda made from the years 2008 to 2011. There is an obvious story that is being told and can be seen through the underlining themes of the different games the players get to explore, as well as through Davey and his narrative process throughout the game. Without any real rules, the player doesn't have any objective other than to follow along with the story and explore the mysterious narrative and relationship as it unfolds. A major theme seen throughout this game as a whole and many of Coda's games is the feeling of unsureness and lack of self-worth. As players begin to explore these different worlds and games, these feelings of unsureness becomes very prevalent. For instance, there is a game around halfway through where the players are placed in an auditorium room, facing a confident lecturer who is speaking about perfection and how to achieve it as he has. Suddenly, the perspective is switched, as players become the lecturer and get to see his true feelings and thoughts. The things that he wants to say and be perceived as are gold text, and his true insecurities are gray. Soon, all the gold text disappear and he is consumed by his own fears and insecurities. Another more subtle nod at this theme is the house cleaner game. Players talk to a housekeeper character as they perform different chores around the house. The housekeeper at one point asks the player if they want to hear something cheesy, but then immediately withdraws out of nervousness. Eventually, the housekeeper does tell the player what they wanted to say, expressing, "I don't know why I was so nervous to say that." This theme begins to get more prevalent towards the end with the prison games, as the players finally get out after many different versions and trials and has a conversation with their former self still stuck inside. The player reassures their former self that things will change and become better. As seen, this need for acceptance and lack of sureness within themselves is something that is felt throughout a lot of these games. From this, players can interpret it as the developer or Coda projecting his own fears onto his games and the characters within them. The simple text mechanic is very important in relaying this to the players. Interactions in the game is very limited, but when they happen through these texts, they are desperate. That's why this theme is projected so strongly in the game. Coda is seemingly using this mechanic to talk to the players and confess how he truly feels. What is even more important to the unfolding of the story is Davey as a narrator.
Today, I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011. We're going to look at the games made by a friend of mine named Coda. Now, these games mean a lot to me.
Early on in the game, after players run into a lamppost at the end of one of Coda's games, Davey tells the player that Coda will be putting lampposts at the end of all his games from now on. However, in the last game, as players are reading the messages on the wall that Coda is sending to Davey, there is one that reads, "Will you stop putting lampposts at the end of all my games?" This really puts a spin on the narrative and what the players know to be true. It begins to put into question what Davey has been narrating and saying about Coda and his games all along, and a bigger implication of whether Coda is even real. Davey starts the narration in a very calm and collected fashion.
This is why I always liked Coda's games so much, is because it felt like they let me have that connection. I felt as though he was inviting me personally into his world.
However, as players go through more levels, his seemingly calm demeanor begins to disappear and blend into the uneasiness embedded into Coda's games.
It felt okay as long as I had your work to see myself in. I mean, is something wrong with me? Because I know that I did an awful thing, and I'm doing it again right now. Like, I'm showing people your work, but I can't stop myself from doing it. That's how badly I need to feel something again, like I'm an addict. There has to be something wrong with me.
Davey, as the narrator, is the one guiding players through the game. None of the levels would be playable if it weren't for him. He even adjusts certain things in levels to help players move through them faster, like with the stairs game. In essence, he is the core mechanic of the game, as there would be no way to play without him. That's why his eventual breakdown and then sudden disappearance at the end is so important and powerful.
I think I need to go. And I'm sorry, because I know that I said that I would be here and I would walk you through this, but I'm starting to feel like I have a lot of work to do. I have a lot that I need to make up for, and so I'm just gonna...
Davy introduces us to the game, so when he disappears, players are left to wonder alone in the world he left us in. What we think we know about the game disappears with him, and players then have to decipher the true purpose of the game and narrative. The simple mechanic of the game is needed to allow players to truly focus on Davy and his narration. Without a definitive objective, we are forced to rely on him and really listen to what he has to say. The beginner's guide is technically a game, but the limited mechanics are needed in order for the narrative to be told. It allows players to explore these different worlds along with the narrator, but everything that players can do and see is being controlled by Davy, essentially the writer of the story. And that's basically what this game becomes, a story. And like anything with a strong story, whether it's presented as a novel or in this case a video game, its purpose and intent is left for interpretation. The ending for this game is open-ended, and the truth and what the players think they're trying to achieve never really gets done. But that's why the narrative and what Davy did with the game is so powerful. Because at the end, you're not really left with any closure or truth. You're just left with the hollowness and sadness that Coda, or Davy, felt and left behind.